Okay, so first I did the top series in 2025 that I want to start. Then I decided to do another video called the top series in 2025 that I want to complete. So how best to finish off this video trilogy? The top standalones, of course, that I want to complete in 2025. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. I'm a composer, now also a booktuber. You can find my music in The Wheel of Time Season 2, His Dark Materials Season 3, and the newly released psychological horror film, Dead Whisper. So, wanted to do this kind of top, standalones that I want to complete in 2025 because there are a lot of chunky series on my 2025 TBR list, and I kind of want to break it up a little bit because I don't want to exhaust myself. I decided to do one read along for the channel, one became four, and I want to make sure that I also give space for myself to be able to enjoy every book that I read next year, and read things with intention and intentionality. So I decided to pick some standalones. Now, these are in no particular order. I basically have them all on the ground here, so I'm going to kind of pick them up, hold them for the camera one by one, just kind of talk a little bit about my impetus for kind of choosing these particular books. So if you like this kind of video, please like and subscribe, and let's jump on into the books. So the first three that I have here are beautiful editions I got during Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter, where he had unveiled his 4 secret projects, actually 5, but 4 that he had released in these beautiful hardcovers. So I want to read Press of the Emerald Sea. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful hardcover. A lot of wonderful illustrations and just really nice paper, just like really beautiful inside. So every once in a while I'll splurge. When the timing is right, I'll splurge on, special editions. So definitely want to read Tress. If you've read it, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you think of this book. But I am so excited to read these. So I'm going to read Tress. I'm going to read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Look at this cover. I mean, come on. Insane. Insane. So beautiful. So Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. And then, of course, I want to read The Sunlit Man. Look at that artwork. So I want to read these 3 definitely. I'm kind of catching up on all things Cosmere related. These are Cosmere related. So I definitely want to read those. And I'm reading Wind and Truth right now as of this taping. So I'm really excited to kind of read more Brandon Sanderson, of course. And I'm finishing up the Stormlight Archive. I've already read Mistborn, caught up on that. So these are some of the few remaining in the Cosmere that I have to catch up in person. Have you read these, by the way? Let me know in the comments if you have. Or in the Discord channel. We have a Discord channel right now, which I'm linking in the description as well. And I'm also linking all these books in the description in case you haven't heard of them, want to check them out, see if you want to buy them as well. So without further ado, let's kind of continue on the train here. So these next few are interesting because this one, I know very little about the author, except for I always see Brian Lee Durfee mention it on his channel, Louis L'Amour. So Louis L'Amour is an author I don't know much about. I was in Alaska for my honeymoon earlier this year, and I found this book in one of the bookstores there because I figured instead of getting a regular trinket souvenir, why not get a book from the place that we travel to? And they be kind of fun little souvenir of its own. So I found this book called Sitka by Louis L'Amour. So I'm going to read the back of it just so you can kind of get an idea of what it says here. Majestically, blood and ice. Majestically, it rose from the icy waters, the gateway to the awesome wilderness of Alaska. Sitka drew all brand of adventurers, con men, criminals, and pioneers. Men such as trail tough, battle-hardened Jean Labarge. He left the swamps of the Susquehanna behind for the rugged beauty and deadly challenges of this frozen frontier. But the empire-hungry Russians had already established a foothold in Sitka, and they wouldn't give it up without a fierce and treacherous struggle that stretched from San Francisco to the palaces of St. Petersburg. Now, Gene faces the most dangerous fight of his life, a fight for a passionate woman and the right to claim Alaska for America. Historical fiction has become my jam this year. I read Shogun earlier this year, fell in love with it, have been reading some Ken Follett Century Trilogy, loving it. So I'm excited to read this. I think this is going to be kind of a nice adventure story and also kind of a historical thriller. So yeah, looking forward to checking this out. Have you read some Louis L'Amour? Let me know in the comments as well, because, I always love to try to discover new authors for you all, but also, try to highlight books that maybe that some of you haven't heard of. And of course, I would always appreciate your recommendations in turn as well. So this is another standalone. Notice how small these are, by the way. That is very deliberate because I have so many chonkers on my list for next year that I want to make sure that I pepper it in with something that nicely contrasts that. So this is another one. I dropped the other one. Whoops. But this one is a Ken Follett novel. So as I mentioned, I've gotten into the Century Trilogy. I'm going to be reading the Kingsbridge series next year with Pillars of the Earth. But there's a series, right? So I want to pepper it in with something else. And I've heard that this book was his breakout book. It was a thriller novel, a kind of a World War II novel, and that is Eye of the Needle. Don't know much about this one, but I heard that this is kind of what broke him out as a mainstream author. And then he decided to write Pillars of the Earth, and the rest was history. But he kind of came up as a thriller writer, and so he knows how to pace and plot his books in a way that, I think serve him very well, even in historical fiction, where you have these kind of massive scales and scopes. So this one is about one particular war, probably one set of characters. So excited to see how this one, kind of reads through. Next one I'm going to be reading. The next one is probably the oldest copy of a book I have, and that is, wow. It is pretty old. It is Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind. This one's from 1962, I think. Really cool. Sometimes it's fun to read special editions like the ones I showed you, but sometimes it's fun to just kind of read old books, like just for the sake of, it has a history. Somebody else has read them. Many people might have read it before it landed in your hands. Like, where has this book traveled? I always think about stuff like that. I don't know. It's kind of cool. So a story like this is supposed to be a classic. I have actually, it's so sad to say, don't tell anyone. This is our secret, by the way. I have not watched the movie and I have not read the book. So I figured I'll read the book and then I'll watch the movie next year. So that's kind of the plan with this one, Gone with the Wind. Let me know if you've read it also in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Then the next one is dipping into some sci-fi. So let's get into some sci-fi. The next two actually are going to be kind of more science fiction oriented. The first one is called A Canticle for Leibowitz. So I've heard good things about this. It is underrated though in sci-fi from what I've heard. So I'm really looking forward to checking this out. Let me know if you've read it. I don't know too much about it, honestly, but I've heard that it's very unique in the world of sci-fi. So looking forward to seeing this one. It's funny how this one came into my hands too. I talked about this being a book I want to read eventually, and that same day I went jogging around my area and I jogged by a book box, like one of those boxes they have of like a little free library. And I saw that this was in there. So I felt like it was a universe's sign that I actually picked this up and read it. So I'm really looking forward to checking it out. This is another one that I'm going to be reading next year. Now, this one is one of those, oh, I can't believe you haven't read it yet kind of books. So, and that is George Orwell's 1984. So this one I definitely want to read. Sorry if the light is a little glaring here, but I definitely want to read this. Also, it's much smaller, which is nice. But of course, it is supposed to be very prophetic, very, very prescient for the times, and it is echoing a lot of the things that people fear about today. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, how George Orwell's writing is. I never really read Animal Farm, growing up, or any of those other books. Like, in high school, you could kind of read on a couple of different tracks. I know Animal Farm was one of the options. I think East of Eden by John Steinbeck was one of the options. I ended up choosing East of Eden, if I remember correctly. But there were different options you could choose. I never got a chance to read Animal Farm. So that is also one on the list at some point. But I'm going to start with 1984, see how it feels from there. So let's continue down the list because there's more. Oh boy. All right. So I mentioned to you that I went to Alaska for my honeymoon, and I decided to, on a whim, pick up another book from Alaska, and this one is called Alaska. It's by James Michener. So I read about 120 pages of this so far. Barely made a dent in it, as you could tell, because it is such a massive tome. But I absolutely loved what I've read so far. So it's basically Alaska from its prehistoric days to almost present day. The idea being, if you want to know about Alaska, this will tell you. A historical fiction epic wrapped up in this giant scope of a novel. Kind of like the beginning starts with, how was Alaska the landmass formed? And then it goes into the POV of a woolly mammoth trying to care for her young. And then she sees a strange species in the distance trying to attack her. And it's humans. And then the POV switches to the humans. Like, really fascinating stuff, and you're learning so much history as you go. So I'm actually really looking forward to this. Historical fiction is something I'm just really loving now. I'm loving it as much as fantasy, because I think some of the craziest stuff that happens in storytelling happened in real life in history. So interesting things to kind of explore there. So Alaska by James Michener, very excited to get into this one. The next one is, so I mentioned to you, I fell in love with historical fiction after reading Shogun. So I wanted to read another standalone in the Asian saga. So the reason why I'm not counting this as a series, because yes, it's a series of books called the Asian saga, but each one kind of works as a standalone. This one takes place a couple hundred years after the first one and is not really related. So this one is called Taipan. Taipan. So don't know much about this one except that it takes place, I think, in China in the 1800s, if I remember correctly. Different location, different time period. Excited to check this one out. And I've heard this one is as good as Shogun, which is a tall order, because I think Shogun right now is in my kind of contender for book of the year for me. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this one measures up. But this is going to be the next one I read. All right, so as I've always mentioned in pretty much every video, Stephen King's my favorite author of all time. It's my quest to read every single one of his books, and I'm going to read probably one book a month next year. Except I'm not really sure what those books will be, except for this particular one. So this one is on my standalones list, and this is Duma Key. Really cool cover, really cool artwork there. So don't know much about this one at all. It's quite large, but I actually have heard that it is quite good. So I'm going to quickly read the inside flap here for you, and you can let me know what you think about it. If you want to join in, probably throw this on a channel on the Discord or something, and we can discuss about it. But it says, no more than a dark pencil line on a blank page, a horizon line maybe, but also a slot for blackness to pour through. A terrible construction site accident takes Edgar Fremantle's right arm and scrambles his memory and his mind, leaving him with little but rage as he begins the ordeal of rehabilitation. A marriage that produced two lovely daughters suddenly ends, and Edgar begins to wish he hadn't survived the injuries that could have killed him. He wants out. His psychologist, Dr. Kamen, suggests a geographic cure, a new life distant from the Twin Cities and the building business Edgar grew from scratch. And Kamen suggests something else. Edgar, does anything make you happy? I used to sketch. Take it up again. You need hedges. Hedges against the night. Edgar leaves Minnesota for a rented house on Duma Key, a stunningly beautiful, eerily underdeveloped splinter of the Florida coast. The sun settling into the Gulf of Mexico, and the tide rattling of shells on the beach call out to him. And Edgar draws. A visit from Ilse, the daughter he dotes on, starts his movement out of solitude. He meets a kindred spirit in Wireman, a man reluctant to reveal his own wounds, and then Elizabeth Eastlake, a sick old woman whose roots are tangled deep in Duma Key. Now Edgar paints, sometimes feverishly, his exploding talent both a wonder and a weapon. Many of his paintings have a power that cannot be controlled. When Elizabeth's past unfolds and the ghosts of her childhood begin to appear, the damage of which they are capable is truly devastating. The tenacity of love, the perils of creativity, the mysteries of memory, and the nature of the supernatural. Stephen King gives us a novel as fascinating as it is gripping and terrifying. That sounds freaking fantastic. I love how Stephen King explores the creative process. To me, that is one of his strong suits. Whenever he does this, even in the most recent You Like It Darker collection, he explores that in one of the short stories there. So I love it when he does that. I've heard this is very underrated. I'm really looking forward to getting into it. Let me know in the comments if you read this one as well. Also, I almost forgot, Stephen King is releasing a new book next year, which is called Never Flinch, which I think comes out in May of 2025. And it's starring his favorite character, Holly Gibney, who first made her appearance in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy and has now fast become one of the most prolifically written about characters in Stephen King's catalog. So I feel kind of, a little iffy about the Holly character. Like, I like her enough. I maybe don't like her as much as Stephen King himself does, but she's cool, and I'm excited to read that one. But that one is also going to be on my standalones list for sure. So the last book that I have on my definites for standalone reads is, and I got this beautiful edition of Michael Crichton's kind of 3 books in one here, The Andromeda Strain. So Don't know much about this one, except it's kind of like a disease that wipes people out, I think. Probably post-apocalyptic, maybe. I honestly have not read the description on this one, but I've heard it's one of his best, so I definitely want to start with one of his best, because it's been a long time since I read Michael Crichton. I read Jurassic Park when I was 5 years old. It was like one of my first chapter books that I picked up. I was very ambitious as a reader, even as a kid, so I don't know. I always felt like the bigger the book, the more a challenge I wanted to tackle. So I really enjoyed that, but it's like I'm going to reread that at some point, but I figured I'd start with a fresh slate on Michael Crichton. So this is the one I want to read first. So that is my standalones list. I don't know. Let me know if you think this is absolutely crazy beyond all the series that I have planned for next year. Let me know if any of these should move higher or lower on my TBR. And let me know if you want to join in on any of these. Like, as I always like to say, I love creating a dialogue with all of you. That's the most fun about this channel, the community we build together. Because some people are just getting started with reading in their adult life. Some people have been reading veterans. They read 10 books a month, They read more than I could ever hope to achieve. But I love that there's varying backgrounds, varying reading experiences, and varied interests on both the channel and the Discord. So feel free to join us there. Don't be shy, and feel free to lurk or participate, whatever you want to do, whatever's comfortable for you. The main thing is that you enjoy the process. That's all we care about. So I'm Nick here with Shelf-Esteem. Please like and subscribe. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other. I will see you, as always, on the next video, in the comments, and on the Discord. Take care.